It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Jen Cohen as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. As always, it's great to have you in studio today. Vic Morfin is here from the Coconino National Forest. Welcome back.
Thanks. Good to be here.
We're going to get our spring-summer recap and then a look ahead at fall and winter. You are the Forest Fuels Management Officer.
Yeah, fuel specialist.
Fuel specialist. So Vic's here today to do that, recap summer wildfire season. We just did that with the Kaibab National Forest. We've done it with Pete Gordon was here with Prescott National Forest recently. We kind of recap the summer season as well. So let me ask you, how was the summer season on the Coconino National Forest? We've gone over the fact that, wow, it was a real nail-biter all the way up until, but how did it turn out for you guys?
In the end, I think we dodged a bullet. We had the one large fire that had a lot of potential. Early on in May, down on the Mogollon Rim Ranger District, the Tinder Fire.
Okay.
And all summer, though, we were on the edge of our seats because, as you know, it's extremely dry. All we needed was one start in a bad location, and that could have been really bad.
Tinder Fire, we lost some houses on the Tinder Fire. Was that the one over by Blue Ridge? I should say C.C. Cragen Reservoir.
Yes, just north of C.C. Cragen.
Okay.
That was the big one, and it was early. It was May.
Okay.
And generally speaking, our fire season starts in mid-May, runs through June. The bad part of our season when we get uncharacteristic fires historically.
And I remember that was a human-caused fire. Somebody was down in it was like the perfect storm on that one. Was it a perfect storm that got that fire going and just sent it right into that community?
You bet. It was someone with a campfire in an extremely steep drainage, and it was off to the races. I don't recall if it was red flag conditions for the first day or two, but if it wasn't red flag, it was right there. It was windy and not what you want to get a fire in that location at that time. Yeah,
it raced up there. I think it took all of a day for it to get up there, and evacuations were almost immediate up in that area.
Exactly.
It was moving so fast.
You bet. It was windy, hot, dry, steep terrain, everything you don't want when you're trying to protect houses and whatnot.
I don't know about you, but for me, over since July, it's hard for me to remember just how hot and dry it was. I know it was because we started talking about it so early this year. I mean, You've been here at least once before this year, and Brady's been here, and I know I've had all the forests in here multiple times this year because it was so bad. But lately, it's been just difficult to remember back and say, was it hot? Was it dry? Was it really bad situation? But it was a horrible situation.
Yeah, it really was. It was one of, in terms of dryness, it was right up there with the driest we've ever had. And it was sustained. It kept going and going. But fortunately, we didn't get a start on a bad day in a bad location. As you know, we closed areas of the forest, and we think that was helpful because those key areas we were particularly concerned about because of the potential for the fires to be difficult to control and take and lose infrastructure, watersheds, put people at risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you had 6. It was 5 or 6?
It was 6 area closures.
6, and I noticed it was all around all the communities. It seemed like there were these areas of closure, including the Snowball area on the San Francisco Peaks.
Right.
And then Kaibab had the Bill Williams Mountain shut down too. That was their only closure area, I think. It caused some confusion, though. I think it seemed like the amount of tourists coming north to go camping was like, the forest is closed. We can't go to the forest, but I guess it caused some confusion. People thought it was actually all of it was closed.
Yeah, it was something new because, as you said, normally it's either open or closed.
Right.
Bill Williams, I believe, next door on the Kaibab, they do that annually if the conditions warrant. So that's a thing for them to just close the watershed. For us, and for most forests in Arizona, it's either closed or open. And we were trying this to allow people to still have some recreation opportunities, to still get out and go camping, but protect those key values at risk. And we believe it was a success.
Yeah, well, I mean, the fires dropped off. I mean, we went to stage 1 right away this year. Stage 2 came in right after that, and then it was these area closures went into place. Now, when we say a watershed, maybe we should talk a little bit about that. How does closing that area protect a watershed?
Well, basically, the watersheds at risk from fire if you picture a big basin, drainage, like Dry Lake Hills, San Francisco Peaks, that's where the snow accumulates in the winter and you get that runoff. That's where we get our water from. So they're particularly at risk for fires because they tend to be steeper. They tend to have a lot more fuel. And so it's difficult to fight fire in there. And if you get a fire at the base of that watershed, it will want to run and gut the watershed and burn all the vegetation, make it so that the soil will be moved. Once you get moisture there, you'll have floods and mass sediment going downhill.
Okay.
So it's really important that we protect those watersheds because obviously that's where the water comes from.
Yeah, and having all that on the ground helps to filter it, slow it down, and keep it from mudsliding down the hill. And then I guess Mount Eldon in Flagstaff, anyone who goes to Mount Eldon drives Highway 89, that's probably a good example of, I guess, a small chunk of a watershed that was severely damaged. Was it the 70s?
It was 1977, the radio fire.
Would that be a good example of a mountain that just, it probably never will recover from what happened to it before? I'm sure it didn't look the way it did before the fire.
Exactly. You see evidence if you're at the mall looking across the street now, you can see those sticks that are still there in the denuded landscape, and basically brush came up underneath instead of pine trees. Mm-hmm. And that's a great example. And that's what tends to happen in the Southwest, what we've seen in the pine forests when our watersheds burn uncharacteristically with high intensity. You'll tend to have a few different trajectories. One will be denuded. Nothing seems to ever come back. One will be brush fields come back. And so, and we've also seen extremely thick pine regen come back in those areas. And that's not good either, because as you know, a healthy pine forest is open and park-like. It doesn't grow like carpet.
Okay.
And so basically those trajectories we've seen from catastrophic, uncharacteristic wildfire are all trajectories that we don't think are natural, and they don't seem to be healthy for the forest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, although we dodged bullets this year, and the public seemed to behave really well with keeping the wildfires down and not starting wildfires, abandoned campfires were high on the Coconino National Forest again this year, which is unfortunate. Seems to be the trend, which is something that you guys I know are trying to get to go the opposite direction. We did have fires burning though. And it seemed like when the monsoon hit, we had fires all over the place. You
bet. And every year. The Coconino, we average about 400 fires a year.
Oh,
about 200, about half of those are lightning strikes, natural fires, so to speak, and the other half are human-caused. And this year, once again, as you said, we had about 160 abandoned campfires, which is down from last year. It's an improvement, but it's still a lot. About 170 illegal campfires. So yes, it's still a problem. We're working on it. We think it's getting better. This year was a down year, but we do get those lightning strikes, about 200 a year.
Oh, wow.
Natural fires.
Well, let's take our first break, okay? Fuels Management Officer Vic Morfin in studio today from the Coconino National Forest. This is Countywide. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
It appears these hot ashes are about to be dumped, which could possibly start a wildfire. How will Smokey deal with such a hot situation? The garden hose defense. Next, a thorough stir. Then another spray. And finally, feeling if the ashes are cool.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yes, the selfie. A ritual practiced so frequently with this tribe, but not so much by Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
How I define making? In the broadest possible terms, it is making something extant in the world that didn't exist. Everybody who's ever made anything is bringing something into fruition for a reason. And that act in and of itself makes us stewards of our culture. It's something that we're talking about. It's a response. Actually, it's telling a story. That's really what it is. And I include everything that could be made: painting, sculpture, welding, all of that.
Yellow is positive.
When a kid gets their hands on the world and learns that they can make their fantasy play, that they can make their reality, that's power. And as far as I'm concerned, everyone should feel that kind of power. There we go. If there's something that interests you to bring into the world, that's fantastic. Go figure out how to do it. Go tell your own story. There it is. And so I want to know why you make. Let's go.
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyimake.org.
150 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Welcome back to Countywide. We're talking with Vic Morfin with the Coconino National Forest about just the summer wildfire season. We were just, before we hit the break, we were talking about lightning strikes. Unfortunately, half of the fires we had this year, human-caused. The other half, Mother Nature caused.
Right.
The Mother Nature ones are good. We talked about it with Kaibab National Forest. Bob Lazy was here from Kaibab National Forest, and I was like trying to show my knowledge of the fire wording and how when lightning strikes and it ignites a fire, you guys come in and take a look at it and say, okay, well, we've got a forest road here, we've got a forest road here, we've got maybe a cliff face over here, and we've got this over here. We can let this one do its natural thing. Mother Nature struck a bolt of lightning here, so we can let that clean up the forest floor. When Paul David goes out there, and I got a campfire, and I said, I'm going to go away for the day, and it gets out and burns a bunch of stuff, you got to put this idiot's fire out, right?
All true.
All
yes.
true. All true.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we had a fair amount of lightning strikes. You said 200, at least 200. Yeah. So I'm trying to picture all that. I guess the two that come out to me, there was a period of time where we had one at the top of kind of the Switchbacks area.
Right.
In Oak Creek Canyon. That one's, I want to say it was the Sycamore Fire. Was it the Sycamore Fire? I'm trying to remember what the name of that one was. And then there was the Platypus Fire and the Rhino Fire, which were burning the Secret Mountain Wilderness area. There was a handful of them anyways going on. All beneficial.
True. They tend to be beneficial when they're natural, but it's really all about the conditions. You can have a human-caused fire that can benefit the landscape. It's just we tend to focus on the conditions. How dry is it? What's the weather forecast? But by policy, by federal policy, if it's a human cause, if you go out and start a fire, even if it's in good conditions, quote unquote, we have to suppress it. That's our federal policy. So when we have a lightning strike, we go through the analysis you described. What's the weather forecast? Do we have firefighting resources? Is it going to do good things? But I'd say of those that annual 200 fires a year, we still only manage roughly 10% of them or less.
Okay.
It's still, when we go through that decision matrix and we look at the values at risk, we tend to suppress the fires because they're maybe because of smoke impacts, maybe because there's private property in the vicinity. So we do try to take advantage of that situation. However, due to all the things you have to consider and everything that has to be in line to allow a fire to burn and to manage it, we tend to still put them out. It's a real small percentage that we manage for resource objectives.
There's two fires that were, I would say, in the craw of folks for probably a couple of months, and that would be the Platypus and the Rhino fires. First thing I want to ask you and have you explain is, why do we call them Platypus and Rhino fires?
Well, first thing was, this year they were naming fires after animals. So we had the deer fire and the elk fire and that sort of thing. And they were towards the end of the alphabet, and that's why those two were named what they were named.
Okay, so that's the Platypus and Rhino fire, the Secret Mountain Wilderness area, just northwest of Sedona. Now those fires, and I think over the years we've learned this, is that any fire that is between the Verde Valley, Sedona, and Flagstaff that's anywhere near Oak Creek Canyon and the Secret Mountain Wilderness, during the day that smoke will blow up the canyon. But what I think a lot of people don't know is at night that wind shifts and blows down the canyon. So all that smoke comes right back onto us again. And that's why we wake up in the morning to a bunch of smoke until the winds kick up, blow it back to the north again. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, so the Platypus and Rhino fires, they were not management fires.
They were not.
Okay. They were lightning strikes, but they were in, George Josen sent out, so your spokesperson for the Cocoa Forest, sent some pictures out, and they were in some pretty crazy looking areas.
You bet. It was in some gnarly country, and like you said, we were not managing those fires for resource objectives. We were suppressing the fires, unfortunately, because they were in such nasty, rugged terrain, difficult to access, unsafe for firefighters. We were having to work with aircraft to box them in, and then finally the fire progressed enough to where we could do a successful burnout on the north upper end of the fire to kind of lock them in. The Platypus Rhino grew together, and then we were able to fire out the northern end and secure it. But because of that rugged terrain, we just couldn't put firefighters in there. It was too unsafe.
Okay. And then air support, I think people were wondering, well then, okay, so if you can't put a firefighter in there, and I want to remember, these were burning at the same time. What was the big fire in Northern California? Do you remember the name of that one? It wiped out like an entire town. It was absolutely huge and devastating up there. But I know once our monsoon season starts, that means wildfire season is kind of beginning. Wildfire season kind of starts down here at the bottom of the state, and it slowly progresses northward throughout the summer months. And okay, so we've got our resources down here in the south, and they kind of come up here. But those resources were gone helping out-of-state wildfires. There were no really, was there air support and stuff that could have gotten in there and taken care of those?
It was limited. And so what you described is exactly right. When the monsoons came into our country, myself and a lot of others, we were headed up north. I happened to be going to Oregon. People were going to Montana, Idaho, Washington, California, fighting fires. And we requested air support for these fires, and it was real limited. There were times when it was just not available. We couldn't get helicopters, air tankers, anything. And then there were times when it fluctuated and we could get some resources in. But regardless, even when we get air support in, one thing it's important for people to understand is aircraft don't put fires out. Firefighters on the ground put fires out. Aircraft can support us. And so when we're limited to just aircraft use, all we can do often is just delay the fire, check the fire, but you're not putting it out with aircraft. And so that's what was going on, is we were trying to limit the spread, but we couldn't put it out with aircraft.
What changed when it got to the top of the canyon on the north?
The topography. Okay. Once it got to the top, like a lot of the Mogollon Rim, as you know, it was super steep, gets up into the pine, and it's generally flat. And we have roads to work with, so we could fire off roads. So it was the terrain that changed. And
that burn, if I remember right, you guys had mentioned, I think George put out a press release that there was going to be some burnout operations going on for about a week. And I remember I woke up, I want to say that Sunday morning of that weekend, and I mean, it was just, the smoke was thick, but they got it all done in one weekend, it seemed like.
It went a lot, true, it went a lot better. It progressed quicker than we had planned. We kind of planned on about a week, and it definitely took closer to like 3 or 4 days.
Was it a thing to just, let's get this done? We're just gonna go in there and just get it done and get it over with. These poor people, they've been breathing smoke for a month and a half now, so just get it done. Does that happen?
It does, but often it's a matter of how everything's lining up. The firefighting resources available, the weather, where the fire's at, because sometimes you can't initiate a burnout because of where the fire's at or any of those other things. So it all came together, and of course we were hearing from the public. We knew that the public was tired of smoke. We wanted to put the fire out also, but we didn't have an opportunity until then.
Until it climbed to the top. All right.
Yeah.
Vic Morfin in studio today with the Coconino National Forest. This is Countywide. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back for just a few more minutes of the show.
It appears these hot ashes are about to be dumped, which could possibly start a wildfire. How will Smokey deal with such a hot situation? The garden hose defense. Next, a thorough stir. Then another spray. And finally, feeling if the ashes are cool.
Oh, yeah.
Ah, yes, the selfie. A ritual practiced so frequently with this tribe, but not so much by Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
How I define making? In the broadest possible terms, it is making something extant in the world that didn't exist. Everybody who's ever made anything is bringing something into fruition for a reason, and that act in and of itself makes us stewards of our culture. It's something that we're talking about. It's a response. Actually, it's telling a story. That's really what it is. And I include everything that could be made: painting, sculpture, welding, all of that.
Yellow is positive.
When a kid gets their hands on the world and learns that they can make their fantasy play, that they can make their reality, that's power. And as far as I'm concerned, everyone should feel that kind of power. There we go. If there's something that interests you to bring into the world, that's fantastic. Go figure out how to do it. Go tell your own story. There it is. And so I want to know why you make. Let's go.
Share your own Why I Make story today. Visit whyimake.org.
150 over 90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Welcome back to Countywide. We've got just a few minutes left in the program. So we've got fall and winter burning obviously going to be taking place. We seem to have the weather for it.
Yeah, we started that first week in October, and then it rained. And it keeps coming. So we're hoping we're not out of business for the fall burn season. You get rain this time of year, and the fuel's just, the sun's not up long enough, and you just don't get the drying. So we're crossing our fingers we'll get a little bit more done before the real snows come in.
Slash piles. Do you need the drying of that? Because they've been sitting there for a while.
The slash piles we tend to get during rainstorms, during snow events. So we want it to be wet then because it keeps those piles from creeping, moving around. Yeah.
They're big. They're bigger than I ever thought they were.
Yeah, the delimber piles, the machine piles is probably what you're seeing out there. You bet.
Right. How long do those have to sit before you can actually go in and get rid of them?
You know, generally it's a year or two that they'll sit and dry. And the good thing about them is after they dry for a year or two, the core of those piles stays dry. Even when it snows, it takes a long time to get moisture through that pile. So we can often go in a year or two later, even during a snowstorm, and get them going.
Okay.
And they have so much fuel that they'll burn.
Top priorities for 2019. We're going to look ahead. Get into that crystal ball. I'm sure you guys have got your plan. I think Kaibab National Forest put out a press release already about plans for 2019 and what they're hoping to accomplish. What's the COCO got plans for?
Yeah, in a snapshot, I'd say we've got a few areas. That whole Mountain Air Kachina, south of town, that's on the docket again this year. Then there's a large area up by Highway 180, Kendrick, Slate Mountain, that country up there that we're looking at, and then two areas down on the southern end of the forest. One would be right around Mormon Lake. We call it Mint, right around the Mormon Lake community. And then C.C. Craig and what used to be Blue Ridge Reservoir is another big project.
You name these places, and I feel like they've been on fire for years. We've had plenty of fires out there, but it's not been done. It's not done yet.
No, and it's almost, it makes you wonder if it's ever done. Because, for instance, we started burning Kachina Mountain Air in the early 2000s. And some of those areas we're in now, we're burning for the second and third time. But it's a continual maintenance process. You know, you look before Euro-American settlement, and fire was burning every 2 to 12 years on this landscape. And so we're just in there trying to to maintain that.
Okay, so you guys basically have gone through the first time and got rid of all that old growth, all that old down stuff, and gotten rid of it. We talked about this with Bob Lazy as well. All that big stuff that's been sitting there for years upon years upon years is gone.
Yep.
And now we're going back in. It's more cost effective. It's probably a lot safer for burning as well, and it probably doesn't take as long to burn it either because it is just so opened up now.
All true, and less smoke.
And less smoke.
So you have 100 years worth of pine needles, 100 years worth of down logs, limbs, everything, and you burn it, and then you get to that second and third entry, and it's what we call maintenance burning, and you have less smoke. It's safer for firefighters. And when we get those wildfires in the summer, it runs into those areas, and boy, it's a whole different world.
Okay, Vic, thank you so much for coming in.
You bet.
It's good seeing you. We'll probably see you next year, I would imagine.
All right.
That's today's Countywide. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and we look forward to talking to you again next time.